Old man doing a podcast. Real weirdos, we have English degrees. Real weirdos, we talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Welcome back, everybody, to the Reel Weirdos podcast, and we hope you're doing okay today. I'm Jesse, along with my co-hosts Alex and Jeff, and we are the Reel Weirdos, 2.5 white men with English degrees who talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Today, we're talking about Bone Tomahawk, 2015 film from director S. Craig Zahler. But before we get into that, we've had a letter. We've had a letter, boys. Are you excited about this?
I didn't even know we had a method to receive letters.
Oh, we have a P.O. box. We have one in LA.
Oh, this is new to me. Oh, great. Yeah. Awesome.
We just send them to Alex's house, and then he sends them back over to me.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I mean, we don't have to pay. I guess they don't have to pay as much as shipping because they're already in LA.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Robert Pattinson has written in. Yeah, he was a big fan of our Batman episode. Totally not a joke. And he wants us to workshop. He thought our commentary was so incisive on the Batman that he wanted us to workshop some movie ideas, you know? Like Robert Pattinson's becoming a pretty big name in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of projects being thrown at him, so I thought maybe we could think tank this for him.
Well, I hope I see a big fat Hollywood paycheck for this, but...
Yeah, Robert... Robbie, my boy.
This is like outsourcing. This is like worse than outsourcing to China. This is awful. You're outsourcing.
What do you mean?
You're outsourcing.
We are the world's premier Hollywood think tank, or we will be. Robert Pattinson knows this.
Yeah, he's just in it at first. He's just super hip. All right, I get it now.
Yeah, but
cool.
You know, but Robert, if you do choose the one that we suggest, then you know. Kick us some of them dollars.
Oh, yeah. Some of them sweet mermaid pussy dollars.
Mermaid pussy? What's that a reference to?
Lighthouse?
Oh, god damn it. You're right. Yeah,
okay.
That little figurine.
Drink your coffee, bro. No, there's an actual mermaid pussy in that movie. Like the mermaid.
Oh, God.
It shows her.
I don't remember that.
You know, when he's having the fucking psycho and he's fucking the mermaid and it's like the camera like goes down and it's just got a big old mermaid puss.
How have I forgotten that?
I don't know.
Shit.
That's crazy. It's like one of the most memorable scenes.
Yeah, that scene is...
We're going to have to do that movie at some point. It's so good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Talk about Willem Dafoe farting.
You farts! You goddamn farts!
But anyway, let's go. So he's written in with 4 ideas here, four things that he wants us to workshop. The first, so this is an Indiana Jones reboot. We all know that Spielberg is working on the 5th one. It'll be out soon. But what people don't know is they're gonna redo the whole trilogy, baby. So the idea is to have Pattinson as Indy, and there's some supporting roles. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is slated to appear as Sala, who was John Rhys Davies in the originals. And Christopher Walken is going to play Indy's father. So what do we think? What do we think for Robert Pattinson as Indiana Jones?
I see Christopher Walken and Pattinson getting together again, which is good.
I'm excited to see Christopher Walken in anything. Yeah. As Indy's dad, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Can you reboot something that is still producing active sequels? Is that even is that like splitting the movie particle? Will we like cause like a nuclear type explosion?
Well, like, I don't know.
Remake
DC,
Hollywood with this?
Where we make good movies again? Speaking of the
Batman, where he was just in the Batman, DC is like that, right? That whole Zack Snyder universe got completely split apart because Ben Affleck quit and Henry Cavill quit. But they're still like doing sequels to Aquaman and Wonder Woman that take place in that world while still doing like different Jokers and a completely new Batman. So I think it's just all over the place.
Oh, dude,
I don't know.
Like the DC universe is like if the Marvel universe, I give it one thing, it's organized. Like the Marvel universe is like a nice organized pantry, and DC universe is like a casserole where you're hungry and you don't have like any singular thing to make a casserole out of. So you just like grabbing shit out of your fridge. It's 90% condiments. You know, it's just like that's the DC universe.
Yeah, I mean, my thought on this is like, while he could probably be a decent indie as far as like choosing a young actor, I think you'd ruin a lot of the goodwill that he's built up because nobody wants those remade. Just don't remake them.
Oh, don't remake Indiana Jones. It's sick. Especially don't remake Indiana Jones with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Sala. I have to object to that casting, honestly. I don't know what Hollywood's thinking about that.
There's also talks of Finn Wolfhard as Short Round, which is like ridiculous because he's like a gangly teenager now.
The kid from Stranger Things.
The kid from Stranger Things.
Oh, the one with the
80s kid.
The 80s kid who's in every 80s kid.
Yeah, high cheekbones, and he's like, yeah.
The skinny guy.
Yeah. Isn't he like 20 now?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's like an adult.
They might have done this. They might have done this casting some time ago.
He's 80s college student now.
I'm gonna take a totally different angle with this and just say I dislike it because Indy is just too American to me. I can't have it. I can't have any of these limey fucks.
So was
coming
Batman.
over here.
He played Batman.
I can't have it, Jesse.
That's
fine.
Batman's
more metropolitan. You know,
Batman's also like an idea that's around like a character. You know, like I
can't. I needed to be American.
We gotta kill them Nazis.
Exactly.
Got me whipped.
Yeah, Robert, we know you're listening. We're going to ixnay the Indiana Jones reboot.
I'm sorry.
I think it's a bad idea.
Sorry, we gotta,
for a few reasons.
We're flushing that.
The next one, number 2, is he's being courted for a Roland Emmerich film. It only makes sense that the greatest living director would try to enlist Pattinson because he's a major box office draw now. So the title of the film is Stargate II Through the Wormhole. The plot line is that Earth is invaded by Stargate technology, and a grizzled old Kurt Russell and a young Robbie Pattinson have to team up to kick some alien ass, all the way from Earth to multiple alien worlds. This got blockbuster potential written all over it.
I mean, yeah. We were just talking about before the cast, like Kurt Russell, you know, is such a badass. Why not take him to space? We haven't seen him in space, have we?
Stargate.
Oh, yeah. I haven't watched any of that.
That's the point. Yeah.
See, that's the thing. The joke is lost on me because I have not seen Stargate and refuse.
Kurt
to watch
Russell
it.
is the star of Stargate.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, well.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, you can make the argument that
it
James
doesn't make it
Spader
watchable.
But Kurt Russell is like, he's like on the cover and shit. Like he's the main focus of that film. He's the handsome guy that saves everyone's ass at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I had no context to that piece of shit movie.
Alex, you're a huge Stargate fan. We did a book report where we lavished praise upon it endlessly. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about this idea? Stargate 2 by Roland Emmerich.
Just do it. It'll make so much fucking money. It doesn't even matter. Like, if they roll this shit out right now, it would make easy over 150 million in the box office. Like,
maybe I think his whole disaster thing has come to an end. Like Moonfall was a gigantic fucking flop. He got all this money from like investors in China and stuff to make it, and nobody made money off that thing.
The disaster
his movies are just
weird.
so like dated.
Yeah.
Well, this ties into like sort of a point we've had about other actors. Alex and I talked about this with Coda, which I actually think hasn't come out yet, but don't tell anybody. Where it's like, I want these young actors and actresses who are really good to choose classy projects. And even if this movie would be a success, I don't want to see Pattinson go down that Chris Pratt route of being in junk.
Yeah.
You know, I want to see him in elevated material. Indiana Jones, kind of borderline, but...
And it's funny because he's done the pretty boy role and he has that aesthetic, so he could easily fall into that trap where Hollywood will start using you for everything if you're just hot and pretty. Square jaw, good hairline, we're going to stick you in everything. Like Chris Pratt to me was always a great kind of jokey comedic actor. Like I thought he could have been great if he just stayed in like the Star-Lord lane where he was always kind of like a weird goofball, but it's just seeing him like kind of hammered into everything. I don't know.
Yeah, Tomorrow War, he's going to be Super Mario.
It's just wow.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, so especially since Pattinson was just Batman, he's going to have all kinds of offers like this.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have to be careful about what he chooses to not just, be fall into that junk actor category where you're just making big ass movies because you're a big name. Like, I want him to be classier than that because he has the potential.
The first step is like, don't go to any dinner parties hosted by Uwe Boll. Like, just or Roland Emmerich.
No,
like just
Roland Emmerich. Yeah.
Just Roland Emmerich or Uwe Boll. Don't go to any of their dinner parties, and you should be good.
Alex says do it. I say stay far, far away.
To a dinner party and you see fucking Matthew Lillard and Ray Liotta, sit down and stay for the entire night.
Well, of course, like if it's them, but if Uwe Boll calls you up and he's like, I don't know his accent, so
he's German. He's German.
Oh, great!
Do it.
Oh, that's awesome. so you'd be like, Robert Pattinson. I have no idea what a German accent is. I have never done a German accent in my life. But he can have him come over.
Ich bin ein Pattinson.
I have no idea. Like, I've never even tried a German accent once. That was the first time. I think that it would be truly a bad move for him to consider any kind of disaster movie or anything like that. So I think another hard pass.
Yeah, I'm gonna hard pass on that one as well. Okay, moving on to number 3. It's well known now that the X-Men will be joining the MCU. And with that, there's casting to be done to bring these heroes back to the silver screen. Pattinson is in talks to play Wolverine. How do we feel about that?
Well, he's going to have to meet up with his arch nemesis, Harry Potter, and get into a fist fight because apparently Daniel Radcliffe was slated to play Wolverine.
Oh.
So it's actually kind of like a clash of titans again. Cedric Diggory coming back from the grave to body Harry Potter out of
Holy
a role.
Shit. I'm rooting for Radcliffe.
I'd love to see
I'd
love to see the footage of them trying out the role, the audition footage. It's like back to back and see how that goes. Yeah, I think those would both be interesting choices.
Radcliffe is funny because everyone's like, he's so short, and it's like,
so's Wolverine.
In the comics, Wolverine's like 5'5". Like he's a short dude, actually. So he's supposed
well
to be like,
under Cyclops range.
He's a Wolverine. He's supposed to be small and like it's kind of funny.
He's also like fucking stupidly jacked in the comics, like unreasonably steroid jacked.
Yeah, which I don't think is something Pattinson nor Radcliffe will be able to attain.
I feel like
they'd be a leaner, meaner Wolvie.
If anything, Radcliffe would look a little bit bigger because he's shorter.
Yeah.
Because he'll fill it out a little more. I mean, Pattinson's pretty lanky. I could see him playing like the Silver Surfer, Yeah,
you'd have to... Pattinson would be like the mongoose instead of the Wolverine or something.
Is that I get it.
Something else.
Is there like a thing though, like where how can Pattinson exist as Batman but then also as Wolverine's, like regardless of the split of the universe? Like
they don't exist in the same universe.
This Marvel versus DC, my friend.
No, I just mean
split
like
universes.
That would be like okay for like maybe comic book nerds, but like for like general movie going audiences, it would just be like, the fuck is happening? You can't be both at the same time.
It'd be like when you choose the same character in a fighting game and it's just the same guy but with like a purple shirt on.
Yeah.
So it's just like Marvel versus DC. It's just Pattinson versus Pattinson.
Yeah,
dude.
No one even mentions it.
Let's bring back Toby for that role.
Yeah,
for Wolverine.
Yeah,
it's like a 45-year-old Tobey Maguire as Wolverine.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember Elijah Wood in Sin City?
Yeah.
Like, that was like, I mean, do something like that, Wolverine, instead of like a cat, instead of a weird cannibalistic rapey cat that he was in that movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
But do it as Frodo Baggins. Play the Wolverine character as
Wolverine, Gandalf.
Exactly.
Look at my claws, Gandalf.
All right. Well, we'll put a pin in that one. I think that sounds like a maybe. Although we might prefer.
That's not a pass, but
it's not a hard pass. I could see it. I could see it. The fourth one, this might be my favorite. Speaking of Daniel Radcliffe, actually, serendipitous. I had no idea this would connect. But this last one is a rendition of the classic Jack Kerouac novel On the Road, with Pattinson as Jack Kerouac, Daniel Radcliffe reprising his role as Allen Ginsberg, and we've also got Shia LaBeouf as Neil Cassidy and Fassbender as William S. Burroughs.
Yeah. I'd watch that, actually.
Yeah, that one would be kind of interesting. I feel like Pattinson's still a little too young. But if they're going with On the Road, it is.
I mean, he was pretty
young
at the time. Yeah.
I think.
But he just drank himself into this like old gnarled piece of wood, basically.
People love to bring this up about Kerouac, yeah, but it is true. It is true.
Dude,
he drank himself to death.
I think that you could definitely, with makeup, and you wouldn't even need to CGI it, you could make Pattinson look like a bloated, like not bloated, but like an alcoholic, wrinkly Kerouac. I think.
Well, he's not that at the time of On the Road.
So then, yeah, I think it would be perfect. I think
he's a young man. These other castings are interesting as well. Daniel Radcliffe as Ginsberg.
Did a great Ginsberg and Kill Your Darlings, so he would be. I'd love to see him reprise that role.
Michael Fassbender for sure is Bill Burroughs. I think he'd be great. What do you think about Shia LaBeouf as Cassidy?
I mean, he definitely has that energy. He because in the book Neil Cassidy is like represented as this like just fucking ball, like
a
fireball
tornado
of masculinity, you know, like just, and like they had Garrett Hedlund play him in that On the Road adaptation. He's like young fucking sex buck or whatever, like so he has that fucking energy for it, definitely Shia LaBeouf, and I could see him pulling that one off. I don't know. I'm just not interested in another On the Road adaptation. I'd like to see like something like the Dharma Bums or something where he like just fucking wanders up into the hills above, into the Bay Area, meets other friends and whatnot. I think Lawrence Ferlinghetti was the guy he was kicking with it at that time. But I don't know. There's a lot of interesting ways to go with Kerouac, and I actually think Pattinson could pull off more of a biopic rather than just an adaptation of that one story.
Yeah, sort of sprawling thing, maybe a miniseries. I think
a lot of his books are like autobiographical.
I care more
right?
at this
in some sense.
In my 30s, I care more about the man than I do about the content at this point. I want to know more about the man in like a more deep and intricate way. It's actually interesting. Like this is very serendipitous, I guess, with the release of the new Kendrick Lamar album last night, which is like very, very good and very revealing of an artist that I hadn't quite seen, and many aspects of a personality of an artist that I love that was very it was departed from like the normal consumption of their content, like something I'm expecting. It's like, oh wow, this is more autobiographical. I definitely agree, Alex. I'd like to see something like that with Pattinson.
So Pattinson, maybe you try to modify the idea and have it be like the biopic title, you know, Kerouac, something like that, and
just in the Batman font.
Maybe not that. You want it to be a little more elevated.
There's like a big bat signal for Kerouac, but it's just like a fucking spilled booze bottle.
It's it's a booze bottle. It's like a joint or something. Yeah, yeah. I think that one has the most potential out of all of them. I think I'd like to see. If not the biopic, then On the Road, I'm down. There's so much material in that fucking book that you could do it so many different ways. It depends on the director as well.
It'd be cool to actually do that, and On the Road we do like a same movie but different like interpretations or different.
Oh, a couple different directors get the same actors.
Like,
has anyone ever done that?
I don't know, but it'd be like one movie, but like it would be different perspectives of a same story with different artists.
You know, the closest thing that I've seen to that is I'm Not Here or I'm Not There.
Yeah, the Bob Dylan thing. Yeah,
it had different actors for sure playing Bob Dylan's role. However, at like different parts in his life. I don't know about the filmmaking crew or like the directors. I believe it was just the same
director.
It was cinematically different enough in each sequence that it looked like it could have been, but yeah, I don't know.
Cool. Like it would like director, their crew, their team, whole new crew, whole new team.
Yeah,
but like same movie. It's like in season
same editor.
Yeah, it's like season 1 of One Punch Man, how they had like 12 different artists drawing it, so like you would have these different takes with totally different art styles that captured the mood of the scene so well.
It was directed by a man named Todd Haynes, so it is a singular director.
Got it.
I'm unfamiliar with his stuff. But yeah, Robert Pattinson. I think we're leaning towards Kerouac, man. That sounds cool.
Yep, take that.
That's my vote.
Put that in your pipe.
Wolverine would be interesting. Definitely not Roland Emmerich. Definitely not Indiana Jones.
Yep, pass on those.
All right. Well, with all that out of the way, let's get to the movie. Bone Tomahawk, baby. So, as I said, 2015 film by director S. Craig Zahler, who is a novel writer, which is an interesting little tidbit when we talk about that element of this film. And I chose it because I guess we hadn't done a Western yet, not that I can remember at least. And I love a Western, and I don't think there are very many great examples of a modern Western. Especially ones that are, I don't know, seemingly as classy as this, at least in my estimation, and that also kind of dovetail into like an interesting sort of grindhouse element that is really up my alley. And we're going to say pretty much full spoilers, but just to get some inaugural thoughts here, Alex, what'd you think of Bone Tomahawk?
Bone Tomahawk exists like in this body of an old-fashioned like Western extravaganza. But I think it owns its life force to like an otherworldly, almost supernatural genre. And it borders on the horror at sometimes, like good horror. There's some jump scares in this film, or at least like really eerily tense moments that actually had me frightened. It's definitely a film of two acts. The first one being like a devotional kind of slugfest of cowboys and saloons, ill-received and ill-provoked manners of like the American West. And then the second half is like a Searchers type epic slog towards this unnatural awaiting beast, or cult of beasts.
Some kind of mysterious force out there in the wilderness.
And it never commits to any one theme, and it borders less on camp than gazes at it from like afar. And it decides to present some heavy hitting themes like masculinity, and even, racism is the biggest one, and just race in general of the American West in the late 19th century. But it refrains from making any like severe judgment on any of those themes, and it instead presents it beautifully, cinematically, and very open and bare. And it stars Kurt Russell and his mustache.
It does. It stars Kurt Russell and his mustache.
Hell
his
of a
glorious mustache. Jeff, how'd you feel about Bone Tomahawk?
Bone Tomahawk is just shot its way into like my favorite movies.
Nice.
It was such an enjoyable experience. It was such a highly stylized and raw take on a Western world. It was slow and methodical when it needed to be at the right moments, and dwelled and hung on like pregnant pauses so beautifully, but then equally could get like its hands and elbows dirty and like the traditional, almost like you said, grindhouse or horror movie muck, the blood and guts, and it's not afraid to pull those punches at all, which is given to you in little tastes in the beginning by just how people are killed, specifically the stable boy, but we'll get into that later. But overall, Bone Tomahawk was just a beautifully stylized Western. Yeah, definitely segmented it into two great acts, and something that highlights, I think, a lot of background actors in a lot of movies coming to the forefront and creating a really great posse and crew movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great actors movie. We'll definitely get into that. I want to talk about the attribution you gave of stylized, which is an interesting way of putting it, because it in my opinion, it's almost like anti-stylizing, where it's very naturalistic in terms of its presentation. It's not showy, especially. Maybe some, like, except for like some of the gore at the end, but it almost feels like anti-Hollywood in a lot of ways. I was looking for it this time because I remembered this from the first watch that I had some time ago, where I don't think we have any music until 45 minutes in. And we get music about 3 times, maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the entire movie. Like just these little dots of music. It's crazy. It's really weird.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, even towards the end, when it gets really brutal, there's none of that action movie music. There's none of it. It's absolutely zero. It's very interesting.
There's no
it's
horror
like,
movie music either.
It's like there's no horror movie music, even though it genuinely feels like a horror movie towards the end. But yeah, it's very natural. And was this? Let me look. This was either his first or his second feature, actually. No, first feature. So props to him, man. But I'm curious. Like Alex, what did you think of the filmmaking element?
So I said that it was open and bare cinematically, and I think that alludes perfectly to what you said about the music. I didn't realize there was only 3, but it was obvious to me that it was like in very small little moments that the music would present itself, and it wouldn't even last that long. It was like very short little motifs. There were a few string pulls here and there, not loud enough. Like they were melodic. They were not, that harsh like scratching sound. There were like melodic sounds and things like that when they were like, there's this one scene specifically where one of the characters, Brooder, has this like repeater raised and they're going into like this rock crevice. You just hear it for like 2 seconds though. And that's all it really needs. Cause then you're just like, holy shit, this is tense. But I will contend with it being stylized only because I don't think I understand fully what you mean by that, Jeff, because I think it's made incredibly traditionally in the style of like a Western, just in the 21st century, right? I just feel like the costumes, the interiors, if we get into like the set design and everything, it seemed very Deadwood to me, like very typical Western. So what do you mean by stylized? Do you mean like the gore?
No, what I mean by stylized is I mean that we take the Old West and we put it in this frame of very poetic, very like beautiful painting. We definitely keep the aspects of the racism and stuff like that, but the Wild West was 99% not like that. It was mostly just kind of boring day-to-day life. There wasn't these posses and sheriffs and all this stuff. This stuff happened very rarely, and it was mostly benign. And what we've done is we've taken this very uncategorized and not really well-documented era of American history, and we've
romanticized it.
Thank you. I'm stuttering over my words, but yes, we've romanticized it to a point where it has become what we considered, even this type of is considered like bare bones. It's like, no, this is not what the Old West was like. This is very stylized. This is very dramatic and has a beautiful weaving narrative and has like these things, the Wild West. But what they did was they took that framework and they still were able to put in small details that I do appreciate, like the male-female dynamic. Like I think that all of those aspects of the husband-wife relationship, especially between the sheriff and his wife, or what's their names? O'Harris?
Oh God.
The guy from The Conjuring.
Yeah. O'Harris
no.
or something like that. I have it right
Bum
here.
leg guy.
Yeah. These characters have great grounded moments, but this movie is in essence a very high-minded horror film.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about Westerns in general that you're making. I can't really verify it one way or the other, but it's interesting to think about this movie in that sense, because in terms of the Westerns, it feels very stripped down, but in terms of like representations of actuality, like reality, you could very well be accurate there. But yeah, we could get into the actors as well. I mean, it's a very good ensemble piece. Like it has such a great variety of actors in it, from Kurt Russell to Patrick Wilson and his wife, who's 20 years younger than him because it's Hollywood. Yeah. You guys, And we have Richard Jenkins in there too, which I always love when he shows up.
You
and
love
his
a Richard
character is
Jenkins.
hilarious.
You love a Richard Jenkins, dude. He's always good. Dude, to burn after reading, like it's just everything he does. But like I said before, this is a movie of background actors. These are all like snap famous people.
It's character actors.
Yeah, that you see as like 8th, 7th on the call sheet, and yet they're taking the forefront. I love when movies do that. I always think that's such a great thing. That's why I felt like Moon is one of my favorite movies, because it elevates an actor out of that position and puts them in the forefront. So that's an important thing with the actors in this movie. I think everyone does a great job and it's super fun. I think everyone had a fun time playing these roles.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the lead is Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell. He's very well known for being Kurt Russell. But you also have like Matthew Fox as, what's the character's name? Brooder. And I don't know if I'd seen him in anything since Lost.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's the guy from Lost.
He was great too. Like he really like sold that character well and had a really swaggery but almost like deadly persona to him, and I really liked his character. Brooder was probably one of my favorites.
Was it his overt racism that signaled that?
Oh no, that was my favorite part about him. I was like, oh, this is the biggest bigot of the movie. So here's my hitch. There's his train.
Here's Jeff's relatable core.
No, I think it was more like he was a character that felt like that matched this kind of like high fantasy Wild West that I was really enjoying. This like quick gunslinger with the slick outfit who's killed 100 Indians, and that's a fact, you know, like it's just
that's not a brag.
That Wild
It's a
West
fact.
character. Like I laughed so loud when he was like, that's an ugly boast. I laughed so loud because I forgot that character was there, and so it was perfect. But yeah, I agree. Matthew Fox, he's not in a lot anymore.
No, I don't know what
he
he's
did
in.
really well though. He was definitely my least favorite character, as far as not because of like how he was built. He was a great character, just who he was, right? He was supposed to kind of rub you the wrong way, but I want to say like he wasn't like just flat out two-dimensional supervillain, evil, racist American boy. Like there was some dimension to his character and whatnot, and that's what I mean about it presenting the themes open and bare. Like, it's just like, hey, man, there are going to be fucking people like this out in the Wild West. Like, his whole family got murdered by Indians, you know? So,
yeah, we're sort of getting into something I wanted to talk about, which is economy of storytelling. And this goes into, as well, the fact that S. Craig Zahler is a novelist. Like, he has several published novels. And this movie, in almost all facets, does just enough to let you know who a person is without over-explaining, ever. All the way from, I guess, maybe you get a little bit more with Patrick Wilson and his wife, but everyone else, it's very understated. And that's a thing that ties into a lot of the filmmaking as well. But, yeah, there are all these moments where just a single line of dialogue gives you so much clue into who a character is, and they can be like incidental things, right? Whether it's Matthew Fox just giving the little anecdote about Indians killed his family, like boom, that's really all you need, and it's well delivered. It doesn't linger on it. It doesn't moralize on it at all. The film doesn't do that generally. But then you also have all these moments from Richard Jenkins that are just like, oh, he's a hilarious old man who has a really sensitive heart. Where he's like, there's the moment around the campfire when Kurt Russell's trying to sleep, and he's like, you ever tried to read a book in a bathtub?
Yes, dude, I wanted to talk about that scene so bad. It was so cute. It was the most adorable scene. I've never seen an old man be that adorable in a movie before. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do just that when I get back. And he's like, put a little towel on the side of the bath to dry your fingers when you turn the page.
It's like, that adds nothing to the grand narrative of the story, but it adds so much to making it feel like a real world with lived-in characters. And, yeah, I mean, there's another one I wanted to point out with Matthew Fox where he shoots the Mexican. Richard Jenkins like, he shouldn't have done that. He has a cross around his neck, and he's like, well, Jesus should have saved him then.
Yep. It's like all you need to know about his faith and how he feels. And just to bring it back to Chicory for 1 second, like, there's a little aspect to him what I really loved where he's funny. He's definitely the goofiest character out of the bunch, but there's this thing where he's also the most highly perceptive out of the bunch, because in the beginning he's the one who spots Pervel burying his loot outside and like reports to the sheriff, and that's how they find him. He also like has the weird feeling about Arthur, and then he's like, they take the opium from him. Like, he's always the one that kind of like is the moral compass for the group, and has a great, and that's kind of what you want in like a deputy, is like a very perceptive person. He fought in the war, so you know he's like a medic in the war. So you get, like you're saying, these little snacks about his past that are just like, yeah, okay, perfect. That's all I want to know. That's perfect. And it's really great.
You get that a lot in this film, and it's definitely because he's a novelist. I mean, he does it so well. He's not trying too hard. It's some of the things that I said that I loved a lot about a movie like Barry Lyndon. I feel bad even bringing that movie up all the time, but it's true, because it's sparse, right? And there are little character moments in it where you can just like, your imagination can just go and like run 100 miles with that character. This movie executes that perfectly. And as far as Chicory goes, he is my favorite character, hands down.
Nice.
I think when we talk about the themes of masculinity in this film, he's definitely like the counteracting, like the cooler force to like Kurt Russell's like firebranded version of masculinity.
Mm-hmm. But they inform each other.
Exactly. Yeah. At some levels, it's like a buddy movie. You know, he's the sheriff, Kurt Russell, and this is his deputy. It's funny because his deputy is an old man instead of some young like buck upstart.
It is.
You know?
The younger guy is his deputy. He's the backup deputy.
It's the opinion of the backup deputy that we should not take a dump in this lake.
Nick is his main deputy.
Nick is the first one.
And he gets captured, and he's the backup deputy. So that means like he probably was a deputy when he was younger, but like, you know, has retired now, and it's like, it's so great. So that makes him the perfect person to come along to this posse as far as a narratively, because you need like each person in the posse represents a different narrative element. You know, you have like the man who embodies manifest destiny. You have the young doctor who's just looking for his wife, the moral kind of center. Like, it's just a revenge thing for him. The Kurt Russell is the grizzled hard man who needs to learn a lesson about, you know, maybe not shooting everyone in the leg. Like, there's all these like perfect little book elements to the characters that sit so well. And to that point, like in movies, journeys can be really boring. Like, you sometimes, if the journey's not written well, you just kind of want to get to the point where they're. And
it's like 70% of this film is the journey,
and it's the best
so
part.
Much of it.
Actually, I find the end to where all the graphic stuff comes in, you get all the information about the cannibals. Like, I find all that stuff to be cool. That's fun. But the first half was almost like a Blood Meridian-ish, kind of like slow-paced, cold Western. You know, it was cool.
Yeah, not as dark as that. There are definitely moments of levity, but yeah, like for Richard Jenkins, him prefacing all of these statements with, "It's the opinion of the backup deputy." It's such a great little detail.
Dude, it reminded me so much of Benicio del Toro in Fear and Loathing. Like, when he would just be like, as your lawyer, I advise you to take all of that cocaine. Like, it's just, he would use it for every scene.
It's the language is also it's such a writer's screenplay, because it's the little Western language. Like, is something amiss? Like when like the sheriff comes in, like the bartender, or they're like, after he shoots a Mexican, he wakes up, what's transpired? You know, like, it's just
You've
like
been
that
squirting lemon juice in my eye since I walked in here.
There's just this like way that they used to talk back then that's so poetic and rhythmic. Again, adding to this like stylized way of, because only people who knew how to read could talk like that.
Yeah, even their little writerly moments that only a writer would like think to do, where it's set up that Matthew Fox's spyglass he got in Hamburg, Germany. And thereafter, they call it the German.
The German.
It's just this tiny little thing that it's very writerly. It's very good. It just like these other things we're talking about. It just sort of fills out the world and makes it feel natural and authentic.
Bruder, can I borrow the German for a minute?
Yeah, it's like
go
so
to
excited.
Hamburg and replace it for me. You reckon I will? I think I'll hold on to it myself. It's just so good.
So Alex, I want to explore this topic of masculinity that you brought in. Can you go into that a little bit?
So with Jenkins' character, he operates totally and completely on like this level of kindness. This like almost fatherly, almost if you want to border into it, maternally. I mean, maternal is the more accepted, nomenclature for defining someone.
I'd say he's like
caring.
avuncular,
Yeah,
like uncle like.
Exactly. He's like this, like almost like stately, not authoritative necessarily, but he just operates from this level of kindness.
He is
right?
the wisdom of the group.
Whereas Brooder he operates on this level of manners, much like Mr. O'Harris or whoever the fuck he is, the broken leg guy, and he like operates on this level of survival. Right, this like manhood, this like cult of manhood about survival in the West. I've been wronged, and therefore I will never be wronged again. And to do that, I must ensure that every person that I encounter that looks like the person that wronged me will no longer be like a problem to me, So that informs a lot of his like masculinity. I feel like Kurt Russell falls a little bit in between the two, maybe because of his exposure to chicory. And to his kindness, he kind of softens him up a little bit when he needs to.
You see, he's got a wife and stuff that he cares about, so.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about Kurt Russell, sorry.
Yeah, Kurt Russell has a wife.
Oh, okay. And then I was going to talk about, dude, is his name O'Harris? Sorry.
I'm looking at the script. All it says is Arthur.
Okay, so Arthur's character is like your just typical traditional average male man. He has the wife who's been captured, and he's going to do everything he can to get her back, but he must rely on the grit of other men and other forms of masculinity to get it back. And I think this film does a really good job of blending these four characters together without establishing like too kitschy or token of roles, like this guy's the big bombardier guy and this guy's the guy who's like kind of smart and will diffuse stuff. Like I'm going like way into like military sci-fi context here, but you get what I mean, that they all feel like extremely real examples of men with very real motivations. The only reason that I'm using the word masculine is because they're men. Otherwise they're just very human, right? I just feel like maybe the females in this film don't get a lot of of the same treatment or exploration. It's just not about that, I guess, until more towards the end.
Well, I also would like to just quick counterpoint to that is like, I would disagree in the sense of where when they have enough faith in the female character of Mrs. O'Harris or whatever, to Miss Broken Leg, to call on her as a backup doctor. And I believe that is an important point there where they have the faith in her, and she comes in and they're all very, yes ma'am, and they're all like following her directions. Don't put your finger in the water. Yes ma'am. Like, so there is this aspect where a strong character, the only strong female character, is the one that has been put in the damsel in distress role. So I think that speaks to kind of what you're saying. I think it strengthens your idea of masculinity just outside of the male versus male kind of argument that you're talking about. Is like there's another element to that where we're seeing this like strong female character kind of neutered.
She's like taken out of the equation, right? Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it is a weird borderline because she is the damsel in distress, but she's also like kind of a badass. She gets shit done. She knows what she wants. She knows how to communicate. Like, she's a strong character.
She counts all the troglodytes and gets all like, she's the one that lets them know how many there are.
Yeah, was it her idea to use the opium at the end as well?
I believe so. I believe because she was the one, because she's like, one's gonna die, one's gonna pass out, and nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah, she's got that doctor knowledge. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to define that in terms of like the sort of little masculine universe we're setting up. But it is an interesting thing to note.
Definitely. No, I don't think these are themes that have like a strong claw into the narrative or into the crux of the story. These are simply things
it's just
that are
motifs
presented.
to notice.
Yeah. These are things that are presented. Take them for what you will.
Yeah, like the racism element, we've noted that as well. And the movie doesn't comment on it. It just shows that like some people are fucking racist. And
it
we
makes
definitely were in the Old West, you know?
Yeah, and they make a little bit of a light, like, you know, like the line that Chicory has where he wakes up and he's like, oh, well, Bruder just showed a couple Mexicans the meaning of manifest destiny. Like, that's an awful fucking line. But that's also, like, kind of funny. Like, the way he says it, it's set up in a comedic way, but in the same time, you hear it and you're like, oof.
Well, in that sense about the realism, it's like, if you were Chicory, right, and you were an old man, he says the line, right, Chicory? If you wake up and you're an old man and you want to show your disdain for something that someone is doing who is much more capable than you are in, like, a martial fight, you'd probably get away with saying lines like that, right? I mean, he shows his discomfort with him many times, and he gets a little, like, sly about it, but it's hilarious, the scenes they have to me where they're always apologizing to each other. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry for that outburst. Like, I didn't actually mean it. Like, you're a good guy. I just say things
That's
sometimes.
that Western etiquette that's very, like, pumped up in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like this, like, idea that in the West, everyone was very, like, straight and proper with each other. And if you wronged another man, you apologize for hollering at you. Like this is just this, like, very, like, grandiose and romanticized, like, idea of these male cowboys. You know, it's so great. It's so perfect for this movie because each time they do that, you feel like a little bit of a brotherhood link between them.
Speaking of, some of the dialogue, there's a moment and like these little funny moments. I loved the scene when Patrick Wilson, I'm just going to call him Patrick Wilson. We can never remember his fucking name. Arthur. Yeah. Arthur's taking off the splint for his leg. And he yells, Jesus, goddamn it. And then he looks back up into the sky and he's like, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he has conversations with God a few times where he's where he's like,
I prayed all my life for this.
I don't think I should be angering the Lord right now. I don't think we should be calling upon the Lord right now. Or when he sees the grave, he looks up and he's like, you seeing this?
Yeah.
It's like he has those little, like, links there.
So I do want to respond to there are a few little blurbs I saw on the internet about this film, how instead of, like, it just presenting the racism in general of the 1890s, it itself was actually racist, right? And that is, like, obviously easy to see where they're coming from, and it's understandable to see how you can make that, like, connection. And they remark, they're like, I think the film did things lazily as far as, like, setting up that they weren't, like, real Native Americans. Some people went as far to say the fact that they had to even say that, like, makes it,
what
like,
did you
racist.
need, like, a full anthropological paper on it?
Yeah, I found the explanation was pretty adequate. The guy you had your professor come in, he's called the professor. I mean, I get it. I continue, because I do have a response to this.
Okay, so it's like, I understand why people are saying things like that. However, this film is about literal cannibal, like, non-human beings. There's one line where Kurt Russell says to Chicory, they weren't men. So it's like I already mentioned, there's something supernatural about this world. And I want to propose a scenario here. If you would rather have had this director make it from the view of the Native Americans and how the white man, are the troglodytes, you bring up a whole host of issues of why is a white man making a film about Native Americans? And you would probably just crucify him for that in that sense. So there is no subject matter that is necessarily, like, off limits. Like, if you can't just be like, oh, it's racist because it talks about it, or it's racist because it made the monster people, like certain Native American tribes that, you know, like, they had the white paint and everything, and they wore, like, the loincloths and everything like that. The movie does well to talk about those things without, again, like Jesse said, moralizing it in any way. you have characters that have distaste when we see that thing on the screen that go along with the audience that are like, that was kind of racist and kind of brutal for no reason. You have characters like Chicory that help remediate that. So I don't understand anymore. I'm just lost where a film can and cannot do things about history or about supernatural, like almost sci-fi levels.
It's like a monster movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
at the end.
So yeah, that's pretty much my little rant right there. It's just I just want to say that I'm lost now. I don't understand where we're drawing the line without being obvious to, like, there are filmmakers who do things that are overtly racist and they have been shunned away and like they don't make movies anymore, right? So I don't understand where we're going to draw the line with what is racist and what isn't.
Well, before I respond, Jesse, do you have anything to say? Because I just don't want to, because it's like been back and forth between me and Alex.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that the conversation with the professor says it all. He's a Native American. They tried to say, like, well, they're your people. He's like, no, these are fucking animals. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand this criticism. I understand why people, especially in this day and age, would have this criticism, but it is not a thoughtful criticism. It's not a considered criticism. I think it's a reactionary criticism bred from this sort of, I don't know, the way that people put any sort of otherization on this, like, weird pedestal of you can't do that. I don't know if I'm, like, explaining that super well, but yeah, please jump in, Jeff.
Well, you know, it's hard for me because I definitely agree with the the ridiculousness of the criticism, but at the same time, I will play a little bit of devil's advocate when I see common, not tropes, but just little laziness, like not giving the professor a name. That's just kind of lazy, you know. Why not just give him a name? Everyone else has a name. You know, why call him the professor? I know he's just a side character and he's in one scene, but there's a lot of other characters that are in one scene. So it's just, you know, I find like I'm not agreeing. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm saying, like,
yeah,
these are the things that people, I think, more critical thinkers who have these types of objections, I think these are the things they look for, is how are we humanizing / dehumanizing one particular race over the other. Yeah. So in that sense, like, when you say something, Alex, respond to you of like, these aren't men, these were never men. Well, that is a tactic used by racists to dehumanize and otherize other people to then make what we do to them be okay because they're not human. So there is an element where, like, you are touching on very sensitive topics, but it's up to the viewer to gauge your comfort level with the material that you're viewing and be able to put it in the context of the film and understand. But there are aspects of the film where we do take Native Americans and turn them into monsters. You know, there was, I don't think, ever a tribe quite like this. There's been some brutal tribes, I'm sure. Scalping is a real thing. Bisecting people is a real thing. But these are small, contained incidents, not like The Hills Have Eyes, but with natives. But we've done this, like I said, with The Hills Have Eyes. We've done this trope so many times with white people. We have put white hillbillies and eating each other in the hills so many times. So we've just taken this trope and applied it to something different.
A white man made this. The Native Americans are the bad guy, so it's racist.
And that's what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to show sympathy and empathy for a particular person that may see these type of glaringly lazy aspects of the film, but no, those aspects don't detract from the film, nor do they mean that the film is racist. And that's the jump in logic that I'm trying to highlight here. Is you can take offense, not even offense, you can take a little bit of you can regret what they're saying, but then to make the jump in logic to be like the movie is racist is where you are now ceasing any kind of critical thinking.
Yeah, you can have it be a signifier that points to a tendency in Western, art where it can, utilize a minority group as an enemy. But yeah, I think the kind of person who would have that criticism of this film where the film itself is racist, they'd probably have that criticism about anything where a white guy is talking about Native Americans. I don't know. That's
Or just
my
more
hunch.
where the white guy is in the position of power. He's the hero, and the native is the villain.
That
That's
is
more
what I
the
mean.
dynamic, is the hero-villain dynamic.
Although we are in an age as well to draw in something Alex said, where like people will get mad at you even if you made a movie that's like pro Native American if you're a white guy, because you can't do that because you're not them.
There's no
because
pleasing
storytelling
anyone.
isn't a thing, you know. Anyway,
Yeah. I feel as if after what Jeff said, I do think if they had used a technique that wasn't lazy, I mean, I don't think this would be lazy, but it could be. It could come off on screen as lazy, right? Is like show these monsters also attacking the indigenous people of the United States. Maybe even have the professor come along so you learn more about him as a character. I
wanted him to. He was great.
He could get into little spats with Bruder, right? Like over the fire, while Chicory's there to kind of like mediate with his kindness, and then Kurt Russell's there to mediate with his fucking manly mustache. Yeah, just be like, hey.
Just takes it off, just rips it off, and starts whipping motherfuckers with it.
Exactly.
puts it back on.
Okay, so
goes
now
back
you
to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like it's hard because it exists so much in the like kind of like cowboys versus Indian genre. I mean, they are all white men, you know, going about doing their thing, but it also doesn't exist. Like, it never tried to present itself to me as like, hey, this is like, okay, there are movies and films that are made like in the vein of Birth of a Nation that are supposed to rile up like racial feelings and like supposed to skew history, right? The minute you go into this movie and you realize that these things have horns coming out of their face and that they eat people, you're like, okay, this isn't real. Like,
it immediately becomes fantasy.
I in no way
like,
had that thought of like, oh, this is a representation of Native Americans. No, this is a monster movie.
No,
End of discussion.
Second that the stable hand was killed, and the way when gore is done a certain way in a film, if you watch enough film, especially horror films, you just know. It's like a gut feeling. It's like an uncanny valley kind of thing where like you can do gore in a very hyper realistic way that makes your stomach churn, or you can do it this way that's just like arrow through the head, and just like it's just so like goofy when it happens and you feel it immediately. It's not unintentional. It wasn't meant to be like real. It was meant to be horror goofy.
Yeah, let's move on to that. I don't want to talk about this racism.
Yeah, no, I'm
anymore.
done. I'm already on the next topic.
Yeah. Let's move on to the violence. So one of the things. So I have two thoughts about this. Right. One is that I obviously love my grindhouse and stuff like that. You guys know this. This movie goes into that a little bit. It's a weird balance, right? Because sometimes it does feel goofy, Jeff. There's especially one moment that was the most grindhousey moment where Kurt Russell knocks one of the guy's heads off and is clearly a dummy. And I laughed. I laughed. But then there are other moments that are fucking horrifying. Like some really explicit bisection of bodies and stuff like that. So I'm curious what you guys thought about the violence, because to me, even though it did have that comedic tone a couple times and ventured into that grindhouse territory, it felt very, very understated, which made it very impactful when it did happen, right? There's no welling of the score. There's no signposting in a movie-ish way that violence is about to occur. It just happens, and it's short, it's brutal, it's blunt. It's like the title of the movie, Bone Tomahawk. Very good title. Yeah. But curious what you think about the violence.
The gunplay for a Western is extremely played down, and I liked that. You know, the scene where Kurt Russell shoots the drifter, David Arquette's character, or is that?
Yeah, his name's Purville.
Purville. I mean, is that the actor's name? That's David Arquette,
Yeah, it's
right?
David Arquette. His name's Purvis. That's what it is.
Okay. He actually, I just want to say, like, I haven't seen him in a role in a long time. I was like, what's up, dude?
Yeah. Hi, David Arquette.
So he when he gets shot in the leg, right? I love how Kurt Russell's thing is to shoot people in the leg. But, like,
that's great.
The shot is from, like, far away. It's not some, like, slow, like, what I would call stylized, like, gunplay. It's just, like, you just see the cloud of dust, and you're just like, oh, he just got shot in the leg, and he's hurt. So the gunplay aspect is played down a lot, I think. And it's more about like the piercing weapons and the bludgeoning weapons and just like the things that draw the fat and sinew and tissue of humans, right? Like it's not about like, oh, he just got shot and sniped over and he falls over. It's like we're going to show all of the jazzy jazz stuff. And it made me think actually of our conversation with Man Bites Dog, Jesse, and just the grating ability that violence can have on like the psyche in films, or just like the dehumanizing effect it can have. And it made me extremely uncomfortable, but I don't know. I liked it, but I didn't feel like the grindhouse thing was too strong.
Just a little bit, just a touch.
Yeah, it was just like
a
a tiny bit, right?
Yeah.
No,
a little bit.
No, I like it. I fall somewhere in the middle. I think I feel like there are definite moments of visceral violence. I think the opening scene is perfect explanation of that. That opening scene, I mean, there's like, that's not a normal like Hollywood throat slit. Usually a Hollywood throat slit is like, boom, done, you're bleeding out, that's it. That's already hard enough. But like, you could tell that he's using like a dull field knife because like he's got to like saw at their necks and shit. And it's like, you feel, and then I think Sid Haig is such a great person to have in an opening scene like that.
By the way, B-movie legend Sid Haig. Gotta give a shout out to him. Yeah,
so he's such a perfect
classy,
person to have in
casting.
That opening scene, because Sid Haig is just so known for that type of movie.
Yeah.
So like to see, like to start a movie of someone sawing at someone's throat, and then you see Sid Haig, you're like, all right, I'm in.
Well, I think it was a good move on the movie's part to signpost who is going to want to watch this movie.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't want to save all of that towards the end. You want to have a little bit of signposting so that people who aren't comfortable with that level of brutality aren't going to sit through the whole thing, you know.
But to kind of go, just to respond to the point of like it feeling uncomfortable, there are scenes that definitely make you wince. But I feel like they're much less, in my opinion, than the scenes that made me laugh. Like,
okay,
like the scenes, like the guy getting bisected, like when they ripped him apart and his guts fell out. I was like, yeah! I was fucking cheering. I was like, fucking yeah! Like, because I love like over the top gratuitous gore in movies. Like, I love it when it's just like let's just dump the bucket of Caro syrup all over the place. Like, who's got the guts? Who did intestine duty today?
Go
Like,
full 13 Assassins mode, just to have people blow up in a shower of red wine.
when there's intestines just hanging out, I'm like, let's go. Like, prop department had work to do. Like, there was things, I just love that kind of stuff. So that scene was awesome to me. I had a blast with that. I think the scenes that were the most visceral were more like simple. Like, you hear like when the Raiders like struggling on top of Brooder, and the sound you hear that it wakes Arthur up is the sound of the knife like tearing through the fabric of his shirt and into his flesh. It's like those little sounds are really what nailed it. Like Arthur's leg, you know, like when they show it and it's like squirting pus and blood, you're like, oh. That is a fucked leg. Like, Arthur's dead no matter what happens. Like, there's like that stuff made me more uncomfortable. The stuff like I like that was more grounded in real injuries, like cutting off heads, cutting off scalps. It's like this is horror movie fun times.
What did you think of like one of the most effective moments for me the first time was like, and it lasts maybe 5 seconds, is when they walk past the women. In the
most disturbing scene in the movie.
That's fucked
bar
up.
None. Most disturbing
that was
scene.
legitimately disturbing.
Because
the brood mares.
Because you see what like it change. Oh my god, dude! It changes so much in one scene because you now see what her future was.
Maybe, I don't know if they interbreed or whatever, but
no, I think that's my read. I took it as they kill and capture and eat men, and then they capture women, and then they cut off their arms and legs and blind them so they can't escape. And then they just like make them have their babies.
Entirely possible.
I feel like while that is an entirely plausible read, I feel like it's even more fucked up if it was like their own tribes.
That's what
I think
thought
it
was
is their own
Yeah.
tribes. No, I do think it is their own tribes, but I do also think because those are the only two women there. So I do think they were maybe like I don't.
Which
it's
makes
more
it
fun for me to think that that's what she like her future was because it's like even creepier.
Dude,
Because that's
I was
what she
just
avoided.
thinking, like, I mean, maybe that's like why they didn't abuse her as much. You know, they like just kept her off and it like onto the side.
They were
but I'm
feeding
just, like,
her and stuff. They were like you don't like they were feeding her little things and stuff like that. She said it was because they wanted to fatten her up, but like maybe they were just trying to keep her healthy and not them. You know, it's like it was awful though. That scene was highly disturbing. And like the rocks in their eyes, like blinding.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever play a game called The Forest, like they like that game and the tribals are almost exactly the same, and it's beautiful.
Hey, we're going old school today. We got Jeff throwing in a video game reference.
I've still
It's been
thrown
a
in
while.
video game reference. No, I
been
think
a
I've
little
still
while.
done one almost every episode.
I don't know. Eagle-eyed viewers, let us know. Eagle-eyed. Like,
The real
you
weirdos
just
out there.
stare at the fucking image that I create for an hour. Well, I think we all greatly enjoyed this movie in many elements. There's, the violence sounds like we're a little kind of on two sides on, or at least sort of meeting in the middle. But should we sort of wrap it up and get to the awards?
Sure.
I think we've covered most stuff, but who gets our Phil Hoffman Award for Best Performance?
Oh, that's hard. Probably Chicory. Richard Jenkins.
I'd have to give it to him as well.
Yeah, Richard Jenkins takes it.
I thought I was going to be the odd man out, but I got to give it to Richard Jenkins. He's such a great character actor.
I know. He just blended into it.
He can just do anything. It's crazy. I recently saw him in like the latest Guillermo del Toro movie where he plays like a stone-faced villain, like psychopath. He does that perfectly as well. Yeah, I got to give it to Chicory. Everyone, I got to say, though, did a great job. Yeah. Everyone. Yeah, it's great. Okay. I Drink Your Milkshake Award for Most Memorable Scene.
I mean, I think the scalping and bisection pretty much takes that. I definitely will remember that. But I don't know, to be more artistic, I guess, to be a little more elevated with it, I would say, I don't know. I'm going to pass off. I really don't know, actually. I'm going to have to pass this one. I don't have one.
All right. So I have one, and it's just because it provokes very mixed feelings with me. It changes like the meaning of the film in ways that I can't grasp or explain yet in my own head. And it is the final scene in the film when he throws the rock into the mud and it gets stuck. I don't know, there's obviously something metaphorical operating in that scene, and I don't know. I've just been thinking about it for the past few days ever since I saw the movie. I thought it was a very beautiful way to end the film. I thought it was cool, and it just like really was like this really bare visual representation of the narrative just ending. And it was just like, boom, it's done. Because he has it in his hand, right? And he just chucks it.
Yeah, you don't get that Hollywood movie wrap-up where Patrick Wilson and his wife get back to the cabin and talk about their future. You see him like 6 months later, and then it's like he's walking around. He's like, oh, I got my construction job again. Like, there's none of that crap. It's like the story's over. Your brain can fill in the rest, and I appreciate that, you know? Yeah.
It didn't want to bother with the realism. It wanted to stay within the narrative.
Yeah. So I think I can say this because I'd seen the movie before a couple times, even years ago. And I mean, just that whole cave sequence is always what sticks in my brain. And especially when they walk by the women. I remembered that extremely well because it was just the most fucked up moment of the movie, and added such a, like we talked about a little bit, like this is like a monster movie, and that's where that is completely cemented if it wasn't before, which it probably was, let's be real. But
they had bones in their neck to make them like communicate like raptors.
Yeah,
they're monsters. Oh, that scene. Oh, there we go. I got one. The scene where he's cutting the bone out of that dude's neck and he's like ripping the sinew off it and shit. That was pretty fucking disgusting.
Yeah,
I love the
in his
sound
mouth.
that they made.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this, like it was like a raptor noise. It was like a hollow screeching.
But it was like they could like get it to like supernatural sci-fi levels of loud. You're just like, oh my god, you are not human. Like the screeching was like, I don't know, that was really cool. The sound engineer that worked on that was fucking. It was different and like original enough to be its own like being, and it didn't remind me of any specific like monster, but that was very unsettling.
It sounded like
the noises. That they made.
It sounded like a sour note on a clarinet played through like a steel drum.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
it's like,
that's a good way to put it.
You know that there were a couple sound guys who worked for like a month figuring out that noise and like doing all these different things, layering animal noises and like scraping tin cans, whatever they do. You know?
Yep.
So,
I follow
like
a couple
element.
Foley artists on TikTok and stuff, and
that shit's interesting.
Like they're really, really cool. The dynamic stuff they come up with to make sounds.
I gotta give it the same award or the same scene for my Roller Girl award for most uncomfortable scene. It has to be them walking past the women, just seeing that. Yeah. I don't think there's any real discussion there.
That made me like visibly wince.
And the Frozen Banana award for most comedic scene.
Oh boy. That's a hard one in this because there are these really great moments of comedy and levity,
but they're tiny.
They're so tiny that it's hard to really pick one particular one out.
I'll have to go with definitely the sitting by the campfire,
the bathtub,
and like talking about the bathtub.
Yeah, it's just so heartwarming and so contrary to like the tone that surrounds it.
Yeah, like he's like, "Why do you keep doing it? Why do you read literature in the tub?" He's like, I don't know. I just can't resist that warmness.
I love sitting in the tub, but a man gets tired of staring at his toes after a while.
Yeah. Right. You don't have your iPad to fight around on.
Yeah.
That, by the way, I noted this in terms of like the filmmaking when they were camping. There were a few things that like worked in concert to make that a really cool scene. One is that when they set up camp, you have a foreshot of them, but Matthew Fox is visually set away from the others, so you can see his distinction as a character. He's not really part of the crew, even though he is. So you have that separation. And then it goes into that conversation about reading in the bathtub. So you have this humanistic, realistic, and funny affective moment between characters. But then you're brought back to reality with this punctuation mark of Matthew Fox shooting the coyote. And like, boom, we're back into the reality of the situation, you know?
He does it all like slick gunslinger. He's like reading a book, and he's just like, and then just like back to reading his book.
No, and the whiteness, right, of all of his clothes is all different than like the rest. So
I loved his outfit.
Yeah,
yeah,
he's great, slick man.
He was like if the caretaker from Curious George was in the American West.
What a fucking eclectic reference.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
I have no idea. I kind of remember. I mean, I haven't seen Curious George since I was like 6.
Alex has the book on his, bathroom shelf.
He reads it in the bath on a music stand.
Yeah, he reads it in the bath.
Let's wrap
Curious
this shit up.
George. He's a curious monkey. I don't know if we can do. Oh, there he is. Alex is showing it to us. I don't know if we can do the Willem Dafoe Award for most erotic scene. I guess maybe when like Patrick Wilson's getting it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, with his wife.
I mean,
guess,
I hit fast forward on that scene, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I was like, sex scene, click, 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 click. All right, next.
It was like the most vanilla, just basic movie sex.
Exactly.
Scene
Didn't
ever.
need
It was
to be
not
in there.
E2 Mama Tambien.
Didn't need to be in there. What did it add?
Have a nice shot of
Nothing.
Patrick Wilson jerking off into his pool.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's get out of here. Thanks for listening to the Reel Weirdos podcast. 2.5 white men with English degrees talking about movies for way too goddamn long, come hang out with us on Twitter at Reel Weirdos Pod. Say what's up to Jeff and say what's up to all of us in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you all in the next one where we will talk about Misery with Kathy Bates.
Enjoy your deviled eggs.
Sid Haig my balls.
Sid Haig my balls. Chicka chaka chapo. Now our podcast is done, and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Bo 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 bo.